Welcome everybody back to the DomCast episode 46. We are here on a Saturday, literally less than 24 hours before the second round begins. It's been hell keeping up with all the playoff series and trying to get predictions, but wrapping up the old series. So to help me do that, I brought on what is actually a repeat guest. We've done it a couple of times. This is only your second time on the pod, right, Asher? Because you did a watch party with us. That's what it was. But this is your second pod.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. We had Bucket Patrol on Heat Check. Couldn't get a hold of Heat Check today. Had a lot of fun with him a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, we are moving on to the second round. Asher obviously had stakes in it as he was a Denver fan, so you will be watching as a spectator going into the rest of this. I obviously know what that's like because I say that, but then it was really just last year that Boston was trash. I did the counting, and then I was like, wait a minute, they've been to the conference finals more often than they haven't over these last few years. It just kind of felt like it hasn't mattered since the Warriors existed and we were in the midst of super teams. It just felt like, as far as you can make it was kind of insignificant, but I don't know, it might be a thing this year. That's one of the series that we will be talking about going into Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, Philly, Phoenix, Dallas, Golden State, and Memphis. I guess I'll start by asking anyways, what was your favorite first round series if it wasn't Golden State and Denver?
Well, I can tell you that series was stressful as fuck for me. So not Denver Golden State. My favorite to watch was probably Minnesota in Memphis, just for the comedy factor of things, because that series was some of the dumbest basketball I've ever seen played, but also some of the best.
Right.
As far as like just pure vindication, Celtics in Brooklyn, because those were the people's Celtics.
Yeah, and that series, ending in a sweep and not going 6 or 7, it's probably one of the most shocking results I've seen in a playoff series in quite some time. Because even with me, I was going, whoop. If Brooklyn makes a lot of shots, I guess it could completely go the other way, but then it ended up 4-0, and it was 4 very close games. Before I really dive into it, also, I did already forget, so it probably doesn't even matter, but fucked off the intro. If you like this show, obviously rate it. Y'all, we're almost at 800 on Spotify, so much appreciated for that. Apple Podcast, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. Today's pod will just be some tidbits on the other series, the first round series, since I didn't get to wrap up a couple of these, and then predicting the second round. So there's time markers in the comment section and description per usual if you want to skip around, but I definitely wanted to make sure I had a bit about the series that we really didn't get to discuss over the last few days, because I did a lot of this on my main channel. I guess we'll start just wrapping up the end there with Denver and Golden State. How sad y'all go out in 5. I'm sure Jokic will be named repeat MVP any day now, because NBA has decided they just wanted to completely ruin the award announcements. But anyways, that will be a thing. What was your evaluation of the series? They ended up having, out of the 5 games, 3 of them were close and could have gone either way. It kind of came down to some final shots and final moments where it was just obvious that Golden State had firepower and Denver didn't, and then they also just didn't have the defensive personnel to really close things out. But how'd you feel about it, and do you think having Jamal Murray would have changed the result?
Change the result of the series? Maybe not, but I think he changes the result of some of the games. Like, the evaluation of the series I have is I naively picked Denver in 7 because I live in Colorado, infer from that what you will, and I was like, oh yeah, Denver, we got best player in the series, what can go wrong? And then PTSD. And that lineup was nightmare fuel for the first 2 games, but then Denver made some defensive adjustments. They started really locking down on rotations. They started, containing actions better. And the last 3 games of that series really gave the Nuggets some credit in the series. They didn't go out. They didn't lay down. They fought till the end. And a lot of that comes down to Jokic, because he was absolutely phenomenal in that series. He averaged 31 points on good efficiency. averaged, great numbers across the board. And I'm not going to mention advanced stats because that's half the discourse around his, haters or whatever you want to call them. But overall, just a fantastic series from him. He really proved that he belongs in the playoffs because he didn't back down from the best defender of the generation. And Aaron Gordon really turned his series around. Monte Morris had a couple of nice games. Bones Highland had a couple of good moments. And, the Nuggets have been known to fight as a team. They came back down 3-1 twice in the bubble, which I know it's the bubble, whatever, but, still being put in that position twice and coming back is an impressive feat nonetheless. And I think that the difference in the last 3 games between Denver being defeated 4-1 and being up 3-2 was like 10 points. Mm-hmm. So if you're telling me Jamal Murray comes back and doesn't swing that just a little bit, I think you're tripping. I think at that point you're underrating what a healthy Jamal Murray looks like. But, that wasn't the case. Things happen in basketball. And unfortunately, it's another year of prime Jokic kind of down the drain in a way. But I think that a lot of the issues on the team need to be addressed throughout the rest of the offseason with regards to perimeter defending and, just defense in general. Because a big reason the Nuggets lost that series is they just let Nikola Jokic end up in isolation against Steph Curry. And I think Jokic is a fine to good defender most of the time. However, in isolation against Steph Curry is not exactly where his skill set lies on defense, believe it or not. His slow-footedness really crippled those island possessions, and while he did somewhat contain Curry on like a couple of possessions, he largely got cooked in those moments, and the Nuggets just didn't fight the switch for some reason. And I don't understand exactly why that is, but I'm not an NBA coach. I don't know what goes on with those sorts of things, and a lot of that can just be like, we didn't have the personnel, whatever. But I do think the Nuggets need to make a lot of adjustments to the roster moving forward. They need to get better defenders, better shooters, because the Warriors were also able to hard double Jokic, and the Nuggets were not able to make them pay some of the time. So, the Warriors played fantastic throughout that entire series, and, they're some of the title favorites moving forward because of that series. And, yeah.
I guess the most important thing that I'm looking at going forward is what you were talking about with PTSD. Because, yes, in the first 2 games when it was used to close out quarters, it absolutely just got away from Denver. Later in that series, well, really at the very end of the series, you see Steve Kerr started. And that was where my main questions lied, because death lineups for the Warriors have always been kind of a thing that they end up using at a point in the series or using at a point in the quarter. They kind of spring it on you. It's not really the element that you start with. However, to not start it, that requires you to make some difficult decisions. You would have to put Poole on the bench. You would have to put Wiggins on the bench. Just probably routes you don't want to go. But I guess I'm wondering about, and everyone's confidence in it, but since you're here specifically, your confidence in it going forward. Because in the Denver game that they started it in, which was game 5, Kerr did go away from it. He got Kevon Looney in rather quickly both times. So at the beginning of the game, then I believe it was after the second half, and Denver kind of was just going at it. We're like, all right, cool, we got to go ahead and go as big as we can, because bringing Kevon Looney is as big as the Warriors can go. It's their small lineup, and it matched well against Denver because, as you were saying, they simply did not have the defensive personnel. You're talking about why not fighting the switches. Well, with the Nuggets, your best perimeter guys, as far as guards, is like Austin Rivers. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. That's legit the only good perimeter defender that Denver has in its backcourt.
Yeah.
Like, Jamal Murray is a decent one. Like, he's pretty good on defense when healthy, but obviously they were not with Jamal, so they were running lineups of Bones Highland, Facu Campazzo, and Bryn Forbes in the closeout game. And those aren't going to win you games in the playoffs, those lineups, because Facu is a small guard who can't play defense. Bryn Forbes is a small guard who can't play defense. And Bones Highland is a small guard who can't play defense. And when you put those lineups out against a team with Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, and hell, Gary Payton II was smoking the Nuggets in Game 5, that's just not a lineup that will be able to contain any sort of lineup with any offensive firepower.
Exactly.
And the Warriors were able to take advantage of that. And against stronger competition in, Memphis, who has better defenders in Jaren Jackson, in Dylan Brooks, in Desmond Bane. They have guys who can actually defend. And against a team with better firepower, I think some more of the questions are opened up with that lineup. I don't think it will be nearly as good as in the Denver series, but it's still a good lineup regardless. Because at the end of the day, Draymond Green is able to cover up for guys. And with this lineup, Andrew Wiggins is not a bad defender. He's a solid defender. Steph Curry played great defense in the Nuggets series. He was making rotations really well. He was getting steals a lot. He was really messing the Nuggets up on the defensive end of things. Like, there were games where he did not shoot well in that series, and he was still making a positive impact because of his defensive value, which is not something he's been known for, but it's something he contributed. And a lot of that just is good signs for them, because they'll be able to roll that lineup out against a team that really struggled, for the most part, in the half-court setting in that sort of environment in Memphis, because Jaren Jackson was not playing well in that series, and Ja Morant wasn't playing well in that series. And it's kind of wild to say, but those guys were just really not having a fun time against the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves have a lot of good defenders, but the Timberwolves are a very young team who are just getting started with their journey to being, eventually maybe a title contender. Ant is in his third year, I think. No, second year. Nope. Yeah,
second year. Yeah, year 2.
Sorry, and COVID has messed my timeline up of things, but yeah, Ant is in his second year. Cat is someone who doesn't have a ton of playoff experience. You just look at that team, and there's a ton of players that are just young and getting started. And you look at the Warriors, and that's not the case at all. They have been there. They have done that time and time and time again. And I wonder if Memphis will have the composure to just hang with them, because they struggled against a young team. And really, if Minnesota didn't play super dumb down the stretches in games and blow double-digit leads 3 or 4 times in that series, Minnesota should have won that series in 5. And instead, they lost in 6 because of bad coaching decisions, because they let Memphis go on a 26-2 run without calling a timeout, because they called a timeout in Game 6 with all the momentum going their way when they were up. Chris Finch made a lot of interesting decisions in that series, and Memphis was able to take advantage of those decisions. But Steve Kerr, as much as he's not a fantastic coach, he is a coach who knows how to let his guys play. He is a guy who knows when to call timeouts. He's a guy that knows the feel of the game. Right, and it'll be interesting to see how Memphis is able to deal with that, because outside of Desmond Bane and Brandon Clark, their guys didn't play particularly well. Ja Morant struggled harshly in the playoffs to shoot the 3. He only shot 50% at the rim, I think it was. He shot 31% from mid-range. Overall, Ja Morant had a very poor series by his standards. Dylan Brooks was not a particularly good shooter either. And Jaren Jackson struggled on offense and fouled out of a couple of games and averaged, I think, 5 fouls per game on the series. So him only being able to play about 25 minutes a game so far in the playoffs has been a big hindrance to Memphis, and it'll just be an interesting thing to see if they can, refine a lot of their game, because they've kind of struggled in the half court a lot this season, because most of their half court offense comes down to, hey, Ja, cut and hope you can dunk it, or hope you can get a crazy layup. And some of the time that just doesn't work. Like, Ja is a fantastic player, but sometimes he can't get to the rim. And when that doesn't happen, they struggle a lot of the time. And if Desmond Bane didn't turn into the second coming of Klay Thompson in the Minnesota series, we're probably talking about a Minnesota Warriors series right now. And they'll have to really calm down, because a lot of their nerves were showing, a lot of the young teamness of this team was showing, and they'll just kind of have to settle into it and hope they can defend the death lineup, because if they can't, a similar fate awaits them that met the Nuggets.
Yeah, so before we officially predict that series, I might as well segue into Memphis and Minnesota. And what happened there. So yes, the Grizzlies being a second seed this year absolutely had the effect of having people forget that this is still a very young team that was playing squad last year. Ja Morant, his game has a long time to go. Has a lot of progress to make on his game. I think in the Minnesota series you saw the mid-range game is not there. That's something that definitely needs to come up, so that they can have other options, specifically in the half court in the playoffs, where they can run some sets for him off ball and get him moving, so he can catch the ball and shoot it maybe. So that, specifically three, but I guess mid-range would probably help him more with his on-ball stuff after coming off screens. Because with Minnesota, they just simply took what they did in the regular season and literally translated it to this round. 2 to the ball, showing Cat at the level of the screen. And that was basically that. Help everywhere and make somebody else beat you. Which is funny, because as much as Desmond Bane did hit, the 3-point shooting for most of the series was relatively poor for guys outside of that. So Minnesota had completely given themselves a chance to win this. They, like you said, in 5. So losing in 6 is absolutely crazy. As young as Memphis is, Minnesota is even younger, and they are young, but also some of the young mistakes are coming from guys that you're scared that it's coming from them, like Cat basically being able to just frustrate him because he takes stupid fouls or makes dumb moves on offense that led to fouls. I thought that took him out of important moments of important games and swung the tide of a couple of games. And with Memphis and Ja Morant and the way he struggled, it was kind of what I said at the beginning of the year. Looking at what Minnesota did and what they had the personnel to do, I was just going, okay, well, all right, he could be a passer. He's probably going to have to be a passer this series. And in that, he had a good passing series. He found shooters, like you said. It was just kind of whether they hit it or not. He made the right play a lot of the time, hitting Brandon Clark on a slip, and then Brandon Clark hitting another guy. Like he made a lot of the right reads. But after watching that series, I'm a lot lower on them than I was coming into it. Now I don't think I guess we'll end up because that'll end up flowing into the next series. For me, it's not a thing where I'm looking at how they struggled against Minnesota and saying, well, Golden State's just going to sweep them now. Because I feel like that's where a lot of people's mind has immediately gone. Saying they struggled in Minnesota, there's no way they're going to touch Golden State. But the questions that I start to ask is, all right, well, because everything in playoffs especially is about matching up. It's how teams match up with each other. Minnesota matched up with Memphis really well, and they couldn't get it done because they started being stupid once they had the lead. They started being stupid in crucial moments, by the way. D'Angelo Russell, I just don't even know what to say with a lot of what went down with his shot selection this series. Specifically his game-winning attempt.
He was horrendous in this series. He averaged 12 points on 33% from the field.
Yeah, and his selection is just kind of like it's almost like a guy who plays in LA Fitness and is just there to get some shots up. Like that was a lot of what D'Angelo Russell did, so that did not help. They definitely needed him to come along. So they made a lot of those. They made a lot of those mistakes. I covered the Memphis and Minnesota series a good bit on this podcast. The only thing I hadn't really covered was the series ending. Shout out to Cat for taking one of the worst shots I've ever seen under pressure when he took from basically the hash mark at the end of the game when they were still in it. I don't know, but yeah, plenty of young attributes showed there. But so as far as it pretty much pertains to Memphis and Golden State now, I go, all right, well, does Golden State, do they have the matchups to do the same thing that Minnesota did on defense? Are they going to be able to keep Ja out of the paint? Because if you look at what, like I said, it was a copy and paste of Ja versus Minnesota from regular season to playoffs. Now, against Golden State in the regular season for the last year, Ja has been pretty successful against the Warriors. And Memphis has also played them well. And so, I'm re-watching a lot of Ja's games against Golden State. He's able to get 2 feet in the paint quite frequently against them. Given, granted, they are about to see a Warriors team that they hadn't seen before. They have not been fully healthy in any of the matchups. They were missing Dre in some of them. You're missing Clay in some of them. So it's very hard to make, it's very hard to make any emphasis off that. But okay. I'm wondering, like, at times you have Kevon Looney in the games. Kevon Looney is probably not going to be able to do the same thing Cat was doing. Kevon Looney is not really that mobile of a guy, so bringing him up high on screens or just completely trying to take away Ja's runway, Golden State hasn't been able to do that as well. So I feel like this may be a series where Ja can get a little bit more of what he wants, which obviously changes everything you would think about Memphis, because that was a big thing. Memphis, we just watched in round 1 was, damn, they shut out our MVP candidate. We have to find other ways to win now. And also, like you said, Jaren Jackson, foul trouble. So he's rarely able to be aggressive at all. They didn't use Steven Adams at all because Steven Adams didn't match up in this series. Obviously, playing Golden State with Kevon Looney, he'll probably be out there sometime. So there's a lot of different ways Memphis will be able to attack. And while I don't personally think, just seeing some of the things that happened in this series, they're probably not going to beat Golden State. I still think it's going to be a competitive series. So I think Ja will have a better series against Golden State than he had there. But once that death lineup comes out, that's where I start wondering, well, damn, where do you hide Ja Morant though? Because his defense is not that good. He had a good defensive possession against Minnesota the last game. He had a really good defensive possession after Anthony Edwards was just disrespectfully targeting him. But yeah, against Golden State, you can't hide him on Steph. Obviously, there's no such thing as hiding from Steph. Can't hide him on Jordan Poole. Klay Thompson will put you in the post. If you put him on Wiggins, now you're looking at a rebounding issue. Also, Wiggins will probably go at him and make the defense collapse. I think that'll probably be a problem for Memphis in this Warriors series. Is if Ja doesn't take some pride in his defense like all the time, that'll get them routed quick. But I don't know. Those are just some thoughts I have about the matchup. I don't think just because they struggle with Minnesota, they're just due to get washed here. I think it changes a little bit because of the basketball.
Yeah, I think it does, but a lot of what you were talking about with Kevon Looney, I think doesn't really apply in a playoff setting because Draymond Green wasn't like super healthy throughout most of the Memphis games, if I'm not mistaken. And even when he was, they don't go to the like defensive schemes that they do in the playoffs. But Draymond Green, it changes a lot if he's at the center, because you can bring Draymond Green up on high on screens. You can bring Draymond. Draymond can do basically anything you ask him to on defense. And Kevon Looney in the Nuggets series only played like 14 minutes a game. That's from memory, so I could be a couple of minutes wrong, but he played less than 20 minutes a game, and they were going heavy with Draymond Green at the 5. And I think that's something that they'll give Memphis a lot, because that'll be able to mess with Ja more than a Kevon Looney. And I mean, they went to a box and one against Jokic in the playoffs. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they did a similar thing with Ja if Ja really starts messing them up, because like the Grizzlies, outside of Desmond Bane, who is really gonna like punish that? Who's gonna be the guy to step up? Tyus Jones played very well. He shot very well. But if you're losing a game and you have to choose between Tyus Jones taking a 3-pointer or Ja Morant continuing to get 2 feet in the paint and being able to, get to his spots, you're choosing the Tyus Jones 3. So I don't know what Memphis's answer to a death lineup offensively would be, like in a half-court setting. Because in transition, they get out, they run. They're a very good team in transition, but in the half-court, they don't have a ton of actions they go to. They don't have a ton of like shot creators outside of Ja Morant, outside of a Desmond Bane. And also with the Warriors, they're able to hunt guys pretty effectively. And if they're able to get Jaren in foul trouble early on, they'll just target him. Like, the Warriors are a team that will go after guys defensively. And that's the thing that Minnesota should have done in game 6, but they didn't for some reason. They got Jaren to 5 fouls and then just kind of stopped going after him. But if you are against Steph Curry, if you are against Jordan Poole, if you are against Klay Thompson, they are going to try and foul you out.
Well, let me ask you about that, because that is one important thing. So with Jaren Jackson, like a lot of his foul trouble, and I would have to go back and look at each foul to know for sure, but from a lot of what I remember, it had a lot to do with trying to their scheme to stop Cat. So Jaren Jackson was the help in that, and so if you had like Dylan Brooks or Kyle Anderson guarding Cat, obviously either Jaren Jackson was coming over as the help or he was coming over as the rim protector. So that put him in pretty bad positions. You think Golden State will be able to put him in those type of positions, though, given that there's not necessarily a big man that they're going to be giving the ball that he has to basically rim protect against? But having Cat charge at you, or even Anthony Edwards charging at you full speed while you're basically asked to rotate and go vertical, that's clearly pretty hard for him. But will Golden State be able to inflict that same type of damage? Because Jaren Jackson being able to actually stay on the floor changes things quite a bit, and actually be effective, that changes things quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that with Jaren, I think he will still be put in like situations where he has to help, because with the spacing that the Warriors are able to produce, it gives Curry, it gives Poole open lanes a lot of the time to just get to the rack. And if you don't want Steph Curry, if you don't want Jordan Poole having open layups, you kind of have to bring help. And Jaren is by far Memphis's best help defender. So I think he will be having to shift over. And with like shifty guards, I think they're able to be more crafty with things than Cat was. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had more issues fouling against like those smaller kind of guards. I could be also completely wrong with that, but
I think you have to wait and see, obviously.
Yeah, it's gonna be a thing that I think to keep a close eye on. Like Jaren defensively is someone who impacts the game in so many facets when he's able to. But if he's not able to be out there, he's not gonna give you anything, because availability is the best ability. And if he's not available, he doesn't have the ability to give you anything. So if the Warriors can take him out of the game and force Memphis into uncomfortable positions again, it might be a relatively, easy series for them.
I went and looked it up because I knew they went to something last night that I liked, which kind of opened the floor up, and I'm pretty sure they will want to go to this against Golden State. So you were talking about like as far as Golden State's small lineup, and obviously it's going to be hell trying to hide Ja. But on the offensive end, another thing that might get, at least they'll be able to run some sets to get Ja, into the paint, which again swings a series. I like their lineup of Ja, Tyus, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, and Clark. So that's a small lineup with a good bit of shooting. Obviously, you will probably still test some of these shooters, as we saw like for the most of the series. Like I said, a lot of these guys outside of Desmond Bane, we're not having good shooting series, but there's a lot that they can do with a lineup like that. Keeping Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane in the corners, or whoever out of the shooters you want to have in those corners. Brandon Clark coming up for screens, which by the way, I gave Brandon Clark love in my video earlier today, but if Desmond Bane was the MVP for the Grizzlies of this series, but boy, Clark was extra important with his movement off the ball, his activity on the boards, and his versatility and being able to set screens, because him being able to slip, and when they sent two to Ja, like if the Warriors send two to Ja and Brandon Clark slips, all of a sudden now you're looking at a skip pass to the corner or possibly a dunk for Brandon Clark. And so I don't know, I like that lineup. I think that's something that if you're Taylor Jenkins, you got to be thinking this next series. You whatever, like they went to some horn sets in game 5. That was probably one of Ja's best games. So some horn sets to get him open, screening, extra screens basically to keep them from being able to just double him with the ball. doing those type of things, if you're Taylor Jenkins, you're like, all right, we escaped with Minnesota. You cannot win another series with Ja Morant just being an elite passer. That's not going to happen against Golden State. Yeah. That's not going to happen if they were to beat Golden State and go on. Ja has to be unlocked after this. And those are some of the lineups that I look to them to go to. Just maximize the shooting on the floor. And Golden State will probably force that because I sense that this is another series where even though that Kevon Looney might be on the floor sometimes, I'm assuming that you're going to see, you talked about Kevon Looney didn't really play a whole lot against Golden State. Him not playing a lot means Steven Adams is probably not going to play a whole lot in this series either, because I'm just imagining him having to guard pick and rolls or just screens in general with Steph or Jordan Poole, and it doesn't look good. Like, it's, that's not Steven Adams' job.
Especially considering he doesn't bring nearly the offensive versatility of Nikola Jokic, so there's no reason to play him on either end, really.
Yeah, Steven Adams is, this might just be another one where they put him out there for a couple of minutes and you realize, in the first quarter, okay, this is not the series for him. It could happen, or maybe they'll try to get creative because he is size. Again, like you said, it's not like he has great offensive use. So even though he is size, I don't think Steven Adams is going to be the thing that forces Golden State to try to put, their size lineups on the floor, which is, once again, basically just Kevon Looney. Man, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things in this series. My official prediction, I'm still going Golden State in 6. I thought at the beginning, and people, are always gonna probably bring it up because there's no nuance on Twitter, but when the original bracket that I made, and I thought Memphis would be able to maybe take Golden State this year. Steph, I didn't think he was going to be nearly as healthy coming back, off bat. An injury, didn't think Steph was going to be healthy, didn't know how healthy Dre was, had never seen the PTSD lineup before. I had been talking about it throughout the year, but I'd never seen it. So now I've seen it. I'm like, yeah, they have a lot of ways to attack, and Steph is good now. I'd be very surprised if Golden State was able to if Memphis was able to beat them, but I do have it being a competitive 6 games. I don't think Golden State's going to wash them, but that's my prediction. What's yours?
I'll go with Golden State in 5. I think it'll be a similar thing to the Nugget series where it was like a relatively close 5, but I still think that come crunch time, the Warriors are going to be a lot more composed than the Grizzlies, and I think that we touched on, I think they'll be able to give Jaren Jackson foul trouble. I think they'll be able to really be able to pick on certain guys, and I don't think that they'll struggle offensively at all either. So, or defensively rather. And, I see Golden State pretty easily in a close fashion winning this series. Not washing them, but I don't think it'll be particularly close either.
One thing I do want to say before we close out this section, I am very interested to see the Gary Payton the second minutes on Ja Morant. I'm pretty sure that's something that they will bring out. I know because you're not going to have Steph on Ja, so sometimes I expect to see Wiggins on him, sometimes I expect to see Clay on him, and then off the bench I'm sure you'll probably see a couple more Payton minutes, and that'll be interesting too because his defense changes things, but also like he did, I think he pretty much had the dagger against Golden State with the 3-pointers, so he'll have to have that going as well for it to not cancel out, for his defense to be as important as it could be. So I am very fascinated to see how Golden State approaches taking Ja out of the series if they can, but once again, during the regular season, he's had success for a long time, so I'm very interested to see how Golden State turns up that pressure. We will now go to the top of the Western Conference bracket and talk a little bit about Dallas and Utah and Phoenix and New Orleans before actually talking about Phoenix and Dallas. And I'm glad, first of all, I'm glad that this is the matchup. As much as I respected the Pelicans, I did not want to see them have a run just because Devin Booker got hurt. I didn't want to see them play Dallas in the second round. The playoffs, as much as I just enjoy basketball, it is for stars at the end of the day. It's for these stars. So I wanted to see Phoenix and Dallas. We got that. But we'll start with the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, Dallas and Utah happened. I'd been talking about this for a while just because I wanted to see it. Avid listeners of this podcast know I was scouting Dallas and Utah probably a month out from the playoffs when I saw that it looked like it was going to happen, because I was going, well, okay, Dallas has Luka, so that's a lot of step backs and pick and rolls, and Dallas just runs a lot of pick and rolls and they have a lot of shooters, and that does not sound like anything Utah's equipped to handle. And so although Utah is always a good regular season team and they play teams seems close. I was just saying, man, in a playoff matchup, it kind of looks like they're just gonna get darted. And what do you know? They got absolutely darted before Luka was even in the series. That's the part that got me, because my original prediction, and I'll take my L, whatever. Yeah, I believed in Utah way too much because Luka was out with a calf strain. I was thinking about Kevin Durant's calf strain and how long that kept him out, and I was just going, man, if they do bring Luka back this series, to me that meant he wasn't even going to be 100%. I thought they would be just bringing him back out of desperation. So I didn't know if or when we would see him or what value he would have. And so I was like, okay, Utah gets this done. Officially, I said in 6, but they could have got me to believe it would happen in 7. And I told Heat Check, I was like, if they end up getting just absolutely killed by Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie while Luka's out, don't ever talk to me about this Utah core again. I never want to hear it again. And so yeah, I don't want to hear anything about this Utah core because they gave Jalen Brunson 70 points in 2 games. He took 70 points from them in 2 games. At the beginning of the series, it became a thing where Dallas was just like, oh, okay, you know what? We know Utah is bad at perimeter defense. Let's just see how bad. Like, how far can we push it? Can we really just let Jalen Brunson blow by them for, possession after possession? Can we literally just let him get 2 feet in the paint every single possession? Oh, we can? All right, cool. First option, go do it, basically. And so they were able to leave Dallas tied, which was a huge L for Utah. Utah lost their first home game, and then Luka came back, and so they had to kind of like learn, just for a game, they had to get reacclimated on this new hierarchy and how to fit Luka. It was a little bit janky, but that was the only game that they lost with Luka. Utah just utterly ridiculous, bad perimeter defense. Even when they were trying, I can't even remember which game now, but I felt like the effort did kind of go up throughout the series. But oh boy, I just don't know of a team that at one point, I think around 2020, we called them dark horse contenders. I just don't even know if I've ever seen a team. And so you remember, your team played them in the playoffs. So I'm not. You have some experience with this. Yeah. I just don't know that I've seen a team be that historically bad at one thing and be able to get beat by one thing. It was bad.
That series there. I love Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is a fun player. There's no reason for him to be averaging 30 in the playoffs against a competent defense. The Jazz do not have a competent defense for the playoffs. Like in the regular season, they're able to defend. Come playoff time, Rudy Gobert is their only defense. They don't have good perimeter defenders, and people finally started realizing that Donovan Mitchell isn't a good defender. I don't know why he ever got that reputation in the first place, but he has never been a good defender, and he's gotten worse since he started picking it up on the offensive end of things. So he was a turnstile in that series. Jordan Clarkson isn't a good defender. Mike Conley, it's probably best if he becomes a family man now. Like, none of their guys are defenders, and they were struggling to get some of the offensive things that they typically get going. And when you're relying on Bogdanovich post-ups, that probably is a sign that things should change. And we probably witnessed the swan song of the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Utah Jazz. And it was very emblematic of this team throughout the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, and once you threw, so like that was at a point. At least I was able to acknowledge it once they said Luka was going to come back and he was straight. I was going, man, I think they said that 2 games in, and I told everyone here, I was said, man, if they had Luka to start this series, that would have been a sweep. It would have been a sweep because the elements that Luka brought, all of a sudden, now you have step backs to bail your offense out if Utah does have a good defensive possession or they decide they want to go a full switch, because that was the thing. They did not, when it was Jalen Brunson who's quicker, they didn't want to go full switch and have Gobert chasing him around, so they would have him in drop, which isn't really a whole lot better. But if you decide that Luka is a little bit slower, so now we want a full switch, oh well, first of all, Luka's also really, really strong, so I saw him just straight up muscle Gobert a couple of times, just kind of toy with him in a couple of possessions, and then if he had to, it was a step back. So once you added that element in, it was just matter of the shots falling and the series would basically come to an end. The only praise I want to give Utah before we move on, the only thing I'll say is, like, at least they went out with a fight, because they got dragged in game 5, and coming to game 6, I was thinking they know this is over. Quinn Snyder knows he's probably moving on as a coach. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert know this is probably the end for them. I didn't really expect them to fight in game 6, and they did. There was a great look from Bogdanovic at the end of the game, which, and when I was watching live, I didn't realize that would have won them the game. I didn't realize they went for the win there. It's just the pass was a little bit errant, and he dropped it a little bit. If he hadn't dropped it, they probably would have won that game. And we'd have been talking about a game 7 that Utah might have ended up winning, but I'm glad they didn't, because I'm just so done with this group. I never want to have to talk about the Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert Utah Jazz on the podcast again. I just don't. Props to Dallas for, they just a very solid defensive team too. It wasn't just offense that won them these games without Luka. So Luka's not a great part of their defense. And without him, there was possessions where they were just able to keep Utah on the perimeter by aggressively switching. They were able to double and get back, or just show and get back. They were giving them a hell of a time. And that didn't help Utah because, as you said, with the Bogdanovic post-ups, they just don't really have anything great to go to. It was more of, can Jordan Clarkson hit some cool shots? Can Donovan Mitchell create something out of nothing? There wasn't a lot of getting their defense in rotation and getting open shots. And Dallas it was like a computer program watching their offense. Yeah. Simple drive, kick. But that is kind of why I will have some of the things that I have to say about the Dallas and Phoenix series. So before we get to that, RIP Jazz. Don't ever have to discuss them on this pod again. If you are here listening to this podcast, this is the last you will hear of discussion there until it's time to talk about their breakup over the summer.
The 2021-2022 Utah Jazz will officially go in the record books as the Utah Az.
Yes, exactly. I approve that one. Yeah, I'll allow that. We will allow that. Just a little bit to say about Phoenix and New Orleans. I feel the exact opposite. So y'all know I've gone from declaring them dead on arrival basically earlier this season when they said Zion was out, and they were 1 and something. I keep saying 1-12, but it might have not been that. But they started terribly.
It was 1-11, 1-12, something to that effect.
Yeah,
it was real ugly.
They were dead.
It was 1-12. It was 1-12.
There we go. And it didn't look like Zion would play the whole season. And they were in the West, which at the time we didn't know that the West was going to turn out to be a little bit of a mess. But either way, I just completely flipped on them. I bought all the stock, and it's cheap. It's good because I feel like throughout the season, a lot of people weren't paying attention to a Herb Jones. A lot of people might not have been paying attention to Brandon Ingram's development as a playmaker. Those are all things that I was trying to highlight before they got CJ McCollum. So now you got him on there. Obviously, Jose Alvarado has been a great revelation, and he's there to stay. Shout out to the G League. It's another G League product. And then, God willing, they will throw Zion, a healthy Zion on top of this, and that team will be an absolute just buzzsaw to deal with going forward. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll start. Once Devin Booker went out, did you think there was a legitimate chance for the Pelicans to beat Phoenix, or were you just like, they'll still handle it? Because I thought there was a legitimate chance Phoenix was about to get first rounded.
Yeah, I did, because New Orleans gave them a fight, man. Like, I know they lost in the end, but New Orleans was legit giving them a scare for a while there. And, I mean, I like a lot of the Pelicans guys. Like, Herb Jones is one of my favorite players to watch. His defense is something you don't see from rookies, man. Like, you don't see that from any players, period. And he's already out here affecting the game in such a astounding way on defense. Like, he is providing the Pelicans with what shooting gravity is on offense, but on defense. Like, guys don't want to go at Herb Jones. They're going away from Herb. And he was able to do a lot of that in this Phoenix series, and it was really fun to watch. And like Brandon Ingram, his playmaking has taken a huge leap. He has gotten better as a scorer, as, just all across the board. Brandon Ingram has gotten better, and it's been a joy to watch. CJ McCollum, I know he struggled in the series, but he was a huge pickup for them at the trade deadline for next to nothing, because Portland didn't think they'd make the playoffs, so they took a lottery protected first or something like that, and now they don't have that pick. So they traded basically Larry Nance they traded like jack and shit for CJ McCollum, who was fantastic for him. He really helped him out. This series doesn't degrade from CJ. We already knew he wasn't really a primary, just a secondary, and with Zion coming back and probably the roster getting better, he won't be relied on as heavily, and that'll free him up to do a lot more, off the ball and that kind of thing. And overall, Pelicans team is super fun, man. Like, buy the stock while you can. Herb Jones is going to be a future perennial all defensive guy. And I honestly think Herb Jones has some star upside to him. I don't know how likely it is that he reaches it, but like, there are guys who on offense are superstars and are able to get like passable on defense and still be superstars. And I think Herb Jones might be a similar thing where he's so good on defense that if he even becomes like a 15 point per game guy, like, he can legitimately impact the game like a star. Like, get your stock while you can. The Pelicans are going to be here for a long time. Zion said he wants to sign the extension. I know guys say things, but if he does sign that extension, they have a core going forward, and it's a very fun one.
Yeah, I'm glad Zion went ahead and deaded all the talk that he might leave the Pelicans, because he has two clear eyes. Like, he can see. He knows that this is a good team. It's not like the Anthony Davis saga where he was basically just given mid talent the entire time, and he had reason to want to leave. There's no reason Zion should not want to be a part of this. There's literally not even a single one. And from his perspective, he does, just like the rest of us, he doesn't know if he's going to be healthy going forward, so he better sign that extension, and not just don't need to go test anything or try to finesse your way into a lesser deal somewhere else. Yeah, go ahead and collect that. But anyways, I liked how you described Herb Jones when you were saying basically how the gravity that stars have on offense. That's what Herb has. I like that because there's some incredible defensive plays he made in the Phoenix series, specifically in probably game 4, I'm gonna think it was, where I saw him make a rotation. Like, I'm pretty sure he was containing like PNR on one side of the floor, and as the ball swung, like, he ran all the way from one side of the floor to the right corner and blocked a shot as it was going up. So not as it was in a hand, as it had already released, he blocked it. That is a freak of nature defensively. That's that's basically a rotation you don't ever want to have to make as a defender. And if you're able to do that, that's called breaking rules on defense. How superstars break rules on offense and shoot over guys, like that's breaking defensive rules. And you can do that. That's just absolutely insane. He did that twice. Go gadget arms. You can put him on a point guard. Obviously, Chris Paul is just so good that it didn't matter. Which is kind of where I'm going, because, man, look, I after Chris Paul then took Giannis out of air last year, I've never really rooted for him, but that does not mean I don't watch and acknowledge the basketball and the greatness that's happening. And for Chris Paul to have the series that he had, sans Devin Booker, while being picked up the entire floor by 2 rookies, and he is about to be 37 years old. That is incredible. Because as Phoenix was tied, I was going, all right, well, first of all, they got us with the Devin Booker thing, saying that he wasn't even going to come back at all this series, and he just popped back up for Game 6 magically. But so with the information they told us, I was just thinking, oh, okay, well, that means Chris Paul has to be a scorer. That's like, it has to start there, which for one of the games he wasn't, and they ended up losing. So Chris Paul has to score. DeAndre Ayton has to score, and then when they have to kick it out to any of the other shooters, they're just someone's gonna have to hope they hit those shots that they're on that night, because there were some nights where they weren't. And so they got everything to go their way. And Chris Paul just outvetted them, basically, in the pick and roll. They didn't want to take JV off the floor for obvious reasons. That was like their best chance in terms of size against DeAndre Ayton. But like JV and drop while Chris Paul is trying to get to his mid range is basically free points, and he was getting those regardless, whether it was Larry Nance, no matter who was on the other side of that. Chris Paul was able to get there, which does make it surprising you didn't see, especially while Devin Booker was out, makes it surprising that you didn't see New Orleans try to basically double that or try to get the ball out of his hands, kind of how Minnesota treated Ja Morant. I'm surprised Chris Paul didn't get that treatment, because that was it. You'd have probably lived with Miles Bridges or whoever else, Jay Crowder hitting threes, who, by the way, shot 8% for the series from 3, I think. So
I knew it was bad. I did not know it was that bad.
Yeah, so as far as what the chat was saying, I have not fact checked those numbers, but yeah, it was pretty bad. He was airballing. So yeah, you'd have rather anybody else beat you, but there were specific plays where it did seem like they wanted to blitz him, and then they weren't on the same page, and it ended up in a Chris Paul bucket. So I counted 3 games that they won off of the back of Chris Paul just basically getting to his same exact spot and kind of winning those games that were close. So have to give him a shout out. Devin Booker came back. It was ironic how they lost the series, because how they lost the series was really just like, it told the story of the teams. Like, Phoenix is a championship team. The Pelicans are trying, they're the future. And the last shot that really kind of put the game away was the Devin Booker 3 that was wide open because Herb Jones fell asleep. As much as we talk about his defense, he absolutely was ready to help on Chris Paul. That's the pressure that Chris Paul was applying. And he just forgot Devin Booker, like, played that game, I guess. He didn't think Devin Booker was on the scouting report, and he was there, so he was able to knock that down. It was not a great night for Book, which is going to be interesting because I feel like he kind of returned from this hamstring thing early. But yeah, Phoenix was able to close it out. It was a very exciting series. If there was just a little bit less mistakes, we might be in a game 7 right now, and boy, the slander would have been insane for Phoenix to go out, especially because Booker came back, but they didn't. And Pelicans now go to the offseason, just address some of those roster, I don't want to say issues, but just address some of just a couple of things for the roster. Maybe snag another point guard, something like that, and get Herb Jones working on his 3-point shot, because that's going to be important to have his defense on the floor while you have Zion out there, and move forward. For now, we move to the Phoenix and Dallas series that those 2 series produced. 1-4 matchup. We saw this one coming. I will let you start and take the floor on your thoughts on this series, because I'm not exactly sure. We hadn't talked a whole lot this season. I'm not sure where you stand on Dallas. I know there's some people that believe this is a team that can make this sneak run, kind of like they did in 2011. Hell, people didn't really expect that championship run, and they did it. And I know there's a good amount of people out there that believe, hey, Dallas, they've got the defenders, they've got the shooters, they've got the star. Maybe they can go farther than most people actually think. And then, of course, there's Phoenix trying to get back to the finals. And they've already been there, and their roster has less questions. So what do you think about this matchup and how these 2 teams match up with each other?
Yeah, I think I'll have to take your word on 2011 because I was 7. But with regards to this season, Dallas is a team that is kind of interesting because, like, you look at their personnel and you don't think, oh yeah, that's an elite defense. Because who do you point to as, like, the defender? They don't exactly have one guy who is the defender, you know? You're looking at them, you're like, oh, Maxi Kleber, he's pretty okay defensively. Luka could be better defensively. You look through their entire roster and you're like, oh, Reggie Bullock, he's pretty good. Dorian Finney-Smith, pretty good. Not anchors by any stretch. And they're able to put together, like, a good defense despite the personnel, and they are a well-run machine on offense and on defense. Jason Kidd, I was not high on him as a coach at all coming into the season, but he's been able to put together good systems in place on both sides of the floor. And while I do like the team and find a lot of the things they do fun and interesting, at the end of the day, Phoenix is a better run machine. They are similar in the sense of, like, you don't see a defensive anchor for either. Well, no, Mikal Bridges, but, like, you don't see a ton of standout defenders, I should say, because Chris Paul has gotten older and he's not, like, the all defensive caliber he was in his prime. Devin Booker has never been, like, a great defender. DeAndre Ayton has progressed and is a very good defender, but he doesn't have that reputation quite yet. And they are just a better run machine. Monty Williams does a lot with this team. On offense, they do everything to a T. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They are able to just know what they want to do and do it. And I think unless this Booker thing is, like, more serious than we're led to believe, because my philosophy with things is, like, if you're on the floor, you're healthy. I know guys play through injuries, but if you're healthy enough to play, you're healthy. Like, there are things where you're not fully healthy, you're hindered a bit because of, you know, an ankle sprain, a hamstring thing, a calf, you know, there are things that happen. But if you're healthy enough to play, you can go out there and play. And ultimately, if they're able to play, you know, they're out there, and they can't, especially in the playoffs, use that as an excuse, because if you're out there, you're playing at the highest level, you're playing for winning, and if you are not good enough to play, then don't play. So if Booker's able to go, he's going to be held to the standard of Devin Booker, which is a damn good player. And if he's healthy, I think Dallas will give Phoenix some run, because Luka is that guy. He's built different. He is someone who was made in a lab to play basketball. Like, he is what James Harden fans want James Harden to be. He is like a heliocentric player that can play well in the playoffs. He has shown throughout his career that he is a playoff performer, and he played well in both the games he came back for. So I think Luka will give them hell. I think he'll give them trouble. But at the end of the day, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, you know, these guys, they went to the finals last season. They won 65 games or something like that this season. And Phoenix was my title pick coming into the playoffs. And I don't know if they'll still win the title, but I think they'll win the series in like 6 or 7. Like, this is going to be a very close series. Both teams are very good. And I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas won. I would not, like, bet my house, my, you know, everything on Phoenix. But I would pick Phoenix in about 6 or 7.
So first of all, I would definitely be shocked if Dallas eliminated them. If they beat them 4 times, I would not be shocked, like 1-8 shocked, but I'd be shocked. That's kind of my measure of surprise. I would be surprised, but I would not be like, oh my, the Detroit Pistons beat the Bucks in a Yeah. I went out and looking because there's like just no information about how this matchup is going to go besides how these teams have played recently. They only saw each other 3 times in the regular season, and 2 of them I think were in 2021. And the last one was when they had Kristaps Porzingis, so it's just a vastly different team. Dallas wasn't even really on their run yet, so there's very little like X's and O's information out there. Immediately, I am, and this is what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying it's gonna kind of give me pause in the second round. In terms of Dallas, it's kind of the same reason why, and Jalen Brunson's gonna get paid this summer no matter what. But it was kind of the same reason why I would still laugh if a team like the Knicks just tried to give Brunson tons and tons of money. Because while he's good and while we've been plotting his development throughout the whole year, you have to watch what actually was happening in the Utah series. And he was getting easy buckets. Like, there was very little pushback from Utah. It was kind of just him being able to blow by and get to what he wanted as if he were doing drills. And it won't be like that for every team. It won't be like that for competent teams. And so right off the bat in a Phoenix series, Brunson will be good, but I don't think you're gonna, and it's obviously Luka's back, so you're not gonna see Brunson in that type of role anyways. But that type of thing gets more difficult. And Dallas just survived so much in that first round series by being able to do so much of what they wanted to do. And it was very easy for them to get Utah in rotation. It was very easy for them to create openings. Very easy for them to go to a 5 out and just have threes in the corner. Now, all season, they've kind of been running that. Since they've been good, since they became a quote unquote like top team, it's kind of what they've been doing. But I'm worried about how many advantages they will actually be able to create against Phoenix. And that's really what I'm looking for. Because as you were just talking about, this is a Suns team that doesn't lack in a whole lot. I just watched them in that Pelicans series play without Devin Booker for most of it, and then you're going against Brandon Ingram, who is on his way to being this legendary shot creator, but he's already an amazing shot creator. They were defending two of them. CJ, like you said, didn't have a good series, but really defending two shot creators. In this Dallas series, if you're not getting as many of those looks, I guess I kind of wonder, what do you go to then? Now, the obvious answer is Luka ball. Like, it's going to end up becoming, well, how much can Luka get the switches that he might want? And is he going to get the switches that he might want? Is he going... Was that my fucking desktop wallpaper that just made that noise? I thought you just dipped into a pool or something. That was definitely, let me cut that off, because that probably just made it into the podcast. Whoops. Anyways, yeah. If Dallas is not creating a lot of those looks, or if they're not getting a lot of those looks, it's gonna slow down, in my opinion, to, all right, well, let's try to get Luka probably switched on to Chris Paul. That's one of their best bets. I'm sure we're gonna see a good bit of Mikal Bridges on Luka this series. They would try to hunt Chris Paul when they can. That's a massive size mismatch. That's one way you can get the Suns defense to kind of, try to collapse a little bit or try to get the ball out of his hand. But I don't think they're going to be able to that's why I don't think they'll beat Phoenix, because when it comes to that, you're not going to be able to play enough Luka ball to win. Luka's not, in my opinion, and this might age terribly, but I don't think he's going to be able to go and hit enough step backs at the end of a clock for them to be able to win. He'll have good games, obviously. He is one of those scorers, like you said. He's going to be able to get his, but I don't see them getting enough of what they got against Utah to be able to push it that far. But I am very interested to see what other methods that they go to try that. For instance, DeAndre Ayton, and he's shown a lot of improvement this year, and maybe you have a thought about this. I'm wondering how much they try to go at him in PNR, how much they try to force a switch with him on it, whether it's Luka with the ball or Brunson with it, and basically trying to pull him out of position so that Phoenix kind of has to get to their help a little bit and rotate, because ultimately, if you're Dallas, that's what you want. Finney Smith, corner shooter. Reggie Bullock, corner shooter. A lot of these guys are shooters, standstill shooters. A lot of them are. That's like their strongest suit. And so to get to them, you're gonna have to find soft spots in a team that, and Phoenix doesn't always show a whole lot of them. There's that, and then obviously on the offensive end, if you're looking at Phoenix attacking them, your point about Devin Booker, and I wanted to say it while you were talking. Yeah, no one would have felt bad if they lost to the Pelicans. No one would feel bad if Devin Booker's not 100% and they lose this one, because just if you tell the whole truth, like, Phoenix had a lot of breaks last year, and so if they ended up losing because they didn't have a guy be 100%, be like, well, that's what just happened a year ago. So it just kind of is what it is. But yeah, Phoenix is gonna have I don't want to say a field day, but boy, they got quite a bit to go to. When they do use Ayton, like, he is improved this year in being able to score on his own. So if it's not even just out of pick and roll, if it's post ups, which I'm particularly interested in, just because I know Dallas might end up trying to, at a certain point, go 5 out to stress Phoenix's defense as much as possible. But then how do you deal with that on the other end when Dallas, I'm gonna say they probably don't have like a capable defender on a DeAndre Ayton. Like, Powell blocks some shots sometimes, but he's not really known as a terrific defender. And then Kleber, like you said, he's all right, but against Ayton, I'm taking Ayton in that matchup, so you got to worry about that. Devin Booker is obviously always, and if he's healthy, he's always going to be able to create something out of nothing, but that's a guy you're gonna have to worry about. And then Chris Paul, if nothing else, putting guys in PNR and putting Dallas in rotation that way. Or you can just give him mid-range shots if you want. That's what he just did. That still works. That's tried and tested for the most part. Is Chris Paul's mid. It's like, he can get there. We know he can get there. So I think Phoenix has far more to stress than Dallas does. And I really do think Dallas's offense is going to, for the most part, it's not gonna be as well oiled as it was against Utah, and I do think it will end up being Luka, go get us buckets as much as you can, and then I think that's why you would end up with like a 4-2 win in Phoenix's way, because I see it going 6 with a chance for it to go 7, but that's how I would pretty much see that being a 6-game series in the way of Phoenix.
Yeah, same here. I do want to shout DeAndre Ayton out as, outside of Jokic and Giannis, probably the big with the best touch in the NBA, or like one of, he has massively improved. Like, his touch is insane. Specifically this season, or this last series, he shot 86% at the rim.
Yep.
And 70 from like 4 to 14 feet. In that floater range, he has improved a lot. In that rim area, obviously, he's a menace. He is someone who I would look to have a big series, especially if you're Phoenix. I would want to go to DeAndre Ayton because Dallas's bigs. One of the reasons that the Nuggets kind of wanted Dallas over the Warriors is because they have less defensive answers for bigs. Like the Warriors had Draymond, the Dallas had what, Dwight Powell, like, you know. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. DeAndre Ayton is able to get his against the Dallas's bigs, and ultimately I'm going to go Phoenix in 6, like I said, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went 7, I guess. But I feel like this is going to be a longer series, but one that feels like Phoenix is in the driver's seat for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, like we said, with both of us saying with Ayton, Dallas is just going to have to work much harder against They're going to have to work much harder than Phoenix, and I think they got to work much harder than they did against Utah. And so very interested to see how they end up handling that. And very interested to see what their approach is to start. Like, are they going to start by trying to get Luka going as much as possible and then kind of spread out to the shooters? Or is it a thing where you're going to kind of check on the soft spots and get the shooters going first? Because, get Luka, basically, I think, get Luka going first, because that's going to end up being where you try to lean on. But yeah, they're going to have to be working really hard. Some possessions I will specifically be looking for is if they get Ayton switched on to Doncic. Like, obviously Doncic can get that step back over anybody, but an option that he had against Gobert, like we talked about in that series, was to just kind of drive straight into his chest, because Luka might be stronger than Gobert is. And so although we know him as a rim protector, when Luka had the ball, he's able to just kind of put his head down. And I'm interested to see what that looks like against Ayton. Is I don't know if it'll be the same. I don't necessarily see Ayton as like weak sauce, basically, although his feet are not that fast. So that's why I'm very interested to see when that switch happens and how much Dallas goes to it. And yeah, man, Dallas just has to try to create. Obviously, that's the point of any series, trying to create as many advantages as possible. But yeah, with the personnel of this series, Dallas is gonna I want to see how hard they have to work to create those. But yeah, it should be fun. It should at a minimum be fun, though. I hope and I don't think it'll end up being blowouts, because hamstrings are funny. As a matter of fact, there's a hamstring in the Boston series to talk about. Like, hamstrings, they're funny. We saw obviously Harden has a lot of different things going on, but the hamstring injury from last year has seemed to plague him for a long time. And so Devin Booker just coming back from it, I am interested to see how that ends up playing into it. And if Chris Paul. I said Dallas is a better defensive team, so if Booker doesn't end up being that superstar release valve, then all of a sudden, can you still get those Chris Paul masterclasses that he was able to get against a team that really didn't have a great idea of what to do against it? So that'll be fun. That pretty much does it for the West. We will only be talking about one first round series in the Eastern Conference, because that's the only one that really kind of recently ended and was even somewhat interesting. And so ended up being Philly and Toronto. I had Philly in 7. It ended up going to Toronto in 6. They had some injuries that they had to battle through. The Fred VanVleet injury, it was like 50-50. It helped them go bigger, which I thought helped them defending Philadelphia. That was one thing, but it was so obvious in that 6th game when Doc got in the zone bag. It was like, okay, yeah, they need a playmaking shooter out here. You can't survive without that, because Scotty Barnes, the offensive game outside of like the post area and mid-range is just not there yet. So if you're just gonna dare him to shoot, their offense literally broke. It looked like 2K Sims sometimes. You ever do a 2K Sim and they just kind of like pass the ball around to each other and nothing happens? Yeah. That's pretty much Toronto in that last game. So they ended up falling. It could have been, obviously, with health permitting, it could have easily gone 7. If they hadn't lost to the Joel Embiid game winner, it could have ended up going 7. But it more or less, a lot of the factors that I thought would play out ended up playing out, i.e. James Harden not playing great. So game 1 was okay, and then the last game, he was aggressive. He was aggressive in the 6th game. He got to the rim a couple of times. He overall looked more aggressive. He didn't look ultra passive. He just, for the Harden that we were ranking in 2022, that looked pretty good. That looked pretty good. So I was happy to see that. It sucks because it feels like it's all kind of been undone by Joel Embiid just being an injury magnet. I don't mean that in the bad. That sounds like negative connotation, but that's what's happened. He banged up his finger, which I'm not sure if it's the exact injury that Bam Adebayo had in this season that kept him out for a while, but it is something that will probably need surgery as far as I understand, some torn ligaments. That's one. And then he got whacked in his face. Pascal Siakam elbowed him. It's an orbital fracture, which I am going to say that's what Derrick Rose had when his eye was looked like the boogeyman back in 2015 or 16, whenever that was, and he had to wear a mask. So and D Rose, I can't remember how long it took him to come back. Anyways, Embiid had this injury some years ago and he missed 3 weeks and he had to come back with a mask. Obviously concussion protocol keeps him out of the next series for at least 5 days. That's just the concussion. And then after that, it's up to them, I guess, whether they want to put him at risk with a mask out there. Because if he gets hit again, from my understanding, it could be pretty bad. So
yeah,
I never really, the Philly-Toronto series, I only became interested in it once I thought they would be a 3-0 pack. There was not. But so if you want to talk about anything interesting in that series, you can. But also, I'm interested about what you think with Joel Embiid being out there, with 3 or 4 minutes left, and they were up by pretty much 30. And him getting hurt? Yeah, you can take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers almost gave us a masterclass. Didn't quite happen. And there was no real reason for Joel Embiid to be out there with, as you said, 30-point lead with 4 minutes to go. And ultimately, it's a very unfortunate injury because Joel Embiid has had an amazing season. He is an MVP finalist. And if you have him as your MVP, I get it. Like, he has been a phenomenal talent this season and is one of the most skilled bigs in the league. But without him going into a playoff series indefinitely against a team who has been very good throughout the entire season, took care of business in the first round, I just struggle to see a way that, unless Joel really comes back way quicker than we're expecting, that Philly is able to move on. Because James Harden in 2022 was not the player that he was in Houston. He has lost a step. He's worse basically across the board. And that means more DeAndre Jordan minutes. That means more not Joel Embiid Philadelphia big minutes, and none of those bigs are particularly appealing. Like, Paul Reed is probably their best option, unless I'm forgetting someone off the top of my head. But I mean, he's been a guy in the G League, and he should have been playing over DeAndre Jordan for the entire time DeAndre Jordan has been a 76er. But he was still a G League player, and while he's a solid backup big, he's obviously no Joel Embiid. And with Harden struggling a lot in that Toronto series, I just kind of struggle to see the way Philadelphia is able to recoup and move on, without their star.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I did see Doc's explanation. Shout out to the reporters for not backing down, even though Doc has had an attitude lately. Well, I mean, with reason. The world's waiting to come down on his head top. But his explanation for having Joel Embiid in was basically saying, well, first of all, the next possession, I was about to take him out. He said, if you look, you can see I was about to call for a timeout to take him out the next possession. That's one. But he was also saying Toronto had all their guys in still. We've blown 20-point leads recently. And then he said that if you watch where it happened, they built that 29-point lead And then it was like the clock hit, 4 or 3 or whatever it is. So it was kind of like an up to that point thing, and he was getting ready to come out. And I guess what he was trying to say is he would have had to take him out earlier in the midst of the run that was building that lead. It's unfortunate one way or the damn other. Like, it's unfortunate. You can't predict wild elbows. You can't predict sprained ankles. I guess if you want to play it safe, if you see you have a 20-point lead with 6 or 5 minutes left, you could take a guy out. I can kind of understand what he's saying, but I have a saying on this podcast, and it comes out at least once every other week: everything in life is optics. So with people already thinking what they think about Doc, he got the win. They couldn't get the 3-0 packs. Now it's just kind of like, why the hell was your player in there? Why was your star player in there? We saw what happened to Derrick Rose. It just doesn't look. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that Toronto's commentators decided to take the salty ass stance that they did, because before that, Embiid was doing like his airplane celebration after he dunked, and that's like the play right before he got elbowed. And Toronto's commentators go, "Oh yeah, so you get what you deserve." Like, come on now, that's as a professional, that's just kind of whack as fuck. You know, no way to to even soften that.
Yeah, there's no room for that in normal spaces, let alone a professional one.
And what's hilarious is when he did the airplane thing, Toronto's commentator was like, "Oh, that's Bush League." Like, come on now. Like, he said, "That's
come on, man."
Anyways, whatever. So that ended up happening. Now it is moving on to the Miami series. My only other comments about the Toronto series is you see, especially in Game 6, how important Tyrese Maxey is to Philly, specifically right now, because on a game-to-game basis, you just don't know what James Harden you're going to get. It seems like if you get a couple of days off, he comes back and he's a little bit able to recharge a little bit and look a little bit better, a little bit more aggressive. But as games are just kind of coming back to back to back, if he's going against a defense that can basically switch and stay in front of him, which is why I thought he would struggle in Toronto series as he did, it's tough. His main focus now and his main contribution to this Philly team is playmaking, because he still commands a certain amount of attention. Maybe the step back 3 isn't going right now, but as of right now, he's still James Harden. So he will still command a look. He will still command a certain type of defense, guys. We will try to scram a worse matchup out of that. Like, for instance, Fred VanVleet being there at the beginning, that was a guy that Harden could kind of just go at. I think that's one of the things that helped Toronto once he got out. So it still commands a little bit of attention that can open things up, and Harden still can pass very well. He can still make reads very well, so it's not like he's totally useless on the court. And with Tyrese Maxey right now is fresh legs. He's probably, I don't know where he ranks amongst fastest players in the NBA, but he's fast, very fast with the ball. Without it, yeah, he is very much up there. And when Philly's healthy, it's kind of like, all right, Embiid first option. And I guess depending on the night, you kind of might want, let's just do perimeter wise. Perimeter wise, depending on the night, you might want Tyrese Maxey to be your first option. You might want him to be the guy that is attacking off the dribble or attacking closeouts, because when it gets to a thing with Harden, it can get into a lot of dribbling and him just not being able to get the step like he used to, or getting to a floater that just doesn't go in. He was 0 of 10 in floaters at a point in this series. And so, yeah, you need Maxey to break out. And once he did in Game 6, the game changed immediately. Once Maxey got out in transition and started hitting threes, or they started finding him open, the game immediately blew open, and Toronto just didn't have enough offense to come back. So taking that into the next series, you might go, and if you're Miami, then you might look at it and say is, all right, whatever defensive attention we're looking at bringing in Harden, not that you give Harden lanes, because he still will take it and he'll get fouled. Like, you don't want to rotate late and all of that. But yeah, your defensive attention, do not let Maxey don't let him get going, because if he gets going, Philly starts looking, they start clicking in transition, things start opening up, and you could end up dropping a game that maybe you shouldn't drop while Embiid is out. So focusing on Tyrese Maxey, and if you're Doc, that's the guy that you really want to try to get going from the start. When you just let him float around and look pedestrian as he did for a couple of games, and he's not really being aggressive, Philly is a lot easier to guard, especially if Matisse Thybulle is on the floor. He will be playing every game this series because there's no vaccine mandate in the States. So thing that happens there, obviously Toronto was very happy. Matisse basically got played off the floor. He couldn't hit wide open threes. I think it really got to him confidence wise. He ended up having some turnovers. You could just kind of see it. It just wasn't a good look. And so That becomes interesting in this Miami series because I think now it's even more important to kind of have Matisse out there, whether it's switching on guys on the perimeter and chasing around 3-point shooters, or mainly, with this aggressive Jimmy Butler, you really want to have like a very solid perimeter defender on Jimmy Butler. I don't think you want to just like feed him, George Niang or whoever, because Butler is shooting threes now. That happened in the ATL series, and that's opening up the rest of his game. He's playmaking, so they're gonna do their best to keep Matisse Thybulle on the floor. That's a guy you just straight up play off. That's gonna be very fun, and they need him now. And maybe in Toronto you can get away with it by just sitting him down and bringing in a shooter. Into Miami, I think that's a little bit different. As you said, with the big situation, that's where it's like I'm so ready to discuss this Miami and Philly series, but with the question of Embiid now, it's just like damn, because as you were saying, so. God, are we really going to see DeAndre Jordan playoff minutes? That's a one. That's a thing. Paul Reed, like you said, should have been playing. We'll see Paul Reed. The other guy that apparently they're bringing up, his name is Charles Bassey, I believe. He's from the G League. He's from the Delaware Bluecoats of the G League. I don't know what his health is like because he was just missing finals games in the G League finals that they made it to. So that's a big that they're going to be bringing in. Apparently, he'll bring some athleticism. The only thing I would say, like the only saving grace, there is no silver lining in not having Joel Embiid in the playoffs against Miami. There's nothing good about that. But at very least, you're not going against what's known as a scoring center. Bam can, he can score. He'll take a mid-range. But at least it's not like a super aggressive offensive guy. I guess I'm just kind of worried about the rebounding now. Because Bam, he's not gonna just post you up and beat you up and bring out Hakeem moves or anything. But now I'm worried about y'all on the boards. And this was already a bad matchup for James Harden, man. This was already a bad matchup for him. Yeah. You just saw what Miami did to Trae Young. They took him out of the series. They took him out back and tied him up behind the shed. He did not affect this series almost at all. So now you're looking at James Harden, just plug him into the Trae Young role, and you have multiple guys to switch on him. If Harden was trying to get a switch and get the big man on him, Bam Adebayo is more than happy to stay in front of Harden. Look, I'll take my L if it happens. I cannot envision this being a good series for James Harden. I don't know where he finds his spots. He's not Houston Harden anymore. He's slower. And then Embiid is out too, so they're going to have to focus on Harden. Like as an offense, they're going to have to try to get him and Maxey going against a Miami team that is so proficient on the perimeter. Maybe here's what's even worse, right? Maybe there's some lineups with like Tyler Hero in it or Duncan Robinson in it where Harden could try to find a soft spot, which, by the way, Miami's not just going to feed those guys to him. But okay, I can see Philly trying to switch and attack that. But if he does have some success with that, Miami can now just bring out Oladipo like they did against Atlanta, because Oladipo was doing something on offense, and he's also a defender. And so there might not be a way for Philly to even attack. And then there's not going to be an Embiid for at least one game. So I can't even invent ways that Harden will be great here unless the step back just starts magically going again, which it consistently hasn't for better part of a month now. Yeah.
I don't see Harden succeeding for the same reasons you said. And I don't know. We don't know a timetable on Joel Embiid quite yet. And I'm not a doctor. I don't have an estimate either. So if he misses more than like 2 games in this series, Miami will have a load of momentum. Ultimately, I'm going to take Miami, assuming Joel Embiid misses about 2 to 3 games. And if he misses less than that, or if he misses more, it would change. But overall, I'd say like Miami in 5.
I am going to go with that's pretty much what my head was. I was debating it between 5 and 6. The reason I will go 5 is because even if, just from the way I understand the injury, and this was what makes predictions so hard when like last series with Luka, and now is you just don't know when or if or how they're going to be. And for Embiid, now you're looking at them rushing him back, because this an orbital injury is crazy. But if Embiid can play, he will probably play. That's the way I'm looking at it. So if he is past his concussion protocols after the 5 days, and there's not like some career-threatening risks involved with playing with a mask, I'm pretty sure they will probably try to scram, or he would try to scram himself out there for game 2. My thing is, he was already in that Toronto series a bit less aggressive on both ends because of his thumb, or whatever finger he hurt. I saw on defense, Precious Achiuwa started cooking him. They had to call a zone because Precious Achiuwa was going at him one-on-one. Toronto literally started going at him. I don't think he wants to swipe at the ball as much. I don't think he wants to put himself in some of the positions defensively that he might have during the regular season when that hand was healthy. I think he was a little bit timid with that. And then on the offensive end, who knows with how it might affect his shooting. Now you're looking at him going up against Bam, who, yeah, you could probably, he didn't play a whole lot against him this season, but probably get some buckets on, but that's just the hand. And now you're playing with the face injury too, which I remember when Derrick Rose had that, his eye was a lot more messed up, so I think it fucked up his shooting. Worse than it would for Embiid, but either way, it's a banged up Embiid. It is a banged up Embiid, and it's not a favorable matchup for Harden and them. So I could, like, look, if Embiid comes back and he just puts so much pressure on this defense that they're giving up open threes and Tyrese Maxey is able to open up, I could see Philly getting it to 6. But officially, with the injuries, if you combine all that, I gotta go Miami. I just think they match up great. That point we were talking about with Matisse Thybulle earlier, going to be able to take advantage of that. If Jimmy Butler comes out shooting threes again, which that was his first bucket of the playoffs, was a 3, and so he wants to shoot them. He knows that was a thing that teams were planning on taking advantage of, but all of a sudden Philly could be put in a really, really tough spot. Miami is deep. They have multiple rotations. They would have won this series in my opinion anyway, but yeah, accounting for injuries, I'll say 5. And before Miami fans start trying to beat my ass over the thing of, because y'all know so they're going to bring this up about how like a month ago or whatever, the last time Miami and the Sixers played, Philly beat them. My bad, Philly fans, before Philly fans start trying to kick my ass over this, Philly beat them without Harden or Embiid game. That did end up happening, to which I would just say that's cool. That was cool. This is the playoffs. It's totally different. The matchups and the focus on the playbook and what they're trying to exploit, it's a totally different game. Not even saying that anybody can go out and win one game on any given night, but I'm not factoring that at all, that they were able to put that lineup out there. Things change. Again, things completely change when 2 guys are missing, the type of lineups that you play, the rotations on both sides. There's so much that's different, but I'm not factoring that in. That's just like back when, gosh, years and years ago, I remember the Spurs used to take their guys out and they would, contend with or beat contending teams. It's like and then they would, I think they ended up losing to the Heat that year. It's like basketball, it's about matchups. It is so much about matchups. I'm not about to say Philly can win this series just because they won a regular season game without their guys. Just had to mention that because I know Philly fans will. So that would put Miami in the conference finals, where they will take on the winner of the Bucks and Celtics. Now, I already talked about the Celtics and Nets on the pod a ton. Don't need to discuss the Bucks in Chicago really at all. Like, that went exactly how we thought it would. So that's cool. But Chris Middleton is out. He did go out in this series against Chicago. That's the one thing notable that happened. They were able to survive that because the Bulls still just proved to be an unserious contending team. And the lineups that Milwaukee was able to play, they still had a lot of shooting, and they were able to do the shooting while having size, which is important because you're about to go against a Boston team who has a good bit of that. This is fun. I have my thoughts on it. The thing I'll say before I let you take the floor, this is kind of like the Dallas and Phoenix series where you have little information as far as regular season matchups because Boston obviously became a different team as the calendar year turned. And each game they played, like last game they played, the Boston sat everybody. And then the game before that, that's back when they still had Dennis Schroeder. We just have not seen really this Boston team versus this Milwaukee team. But right. I'm curious what you think about this one. Middleton being out, Giannis being, obviously, he's going to be a lot harder to keep out of the paint than Kevin Durant was. There's a lot of things to discuss when it comes to 2 heavyweights. And I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, this series should be a fun one. But Chris Middleton being out is a big deal because if they don't have Chris Middleton, suddenly their second option becomes Drew Holiday. And Drew Holiday is a fine shooter when he's able to not have to chase guys around and exert all of his energy on the defensive end. But when he does, he becomes a significantly streakier shooter, and most of the time those streaks are bad streaks. And with Jason Tatum being him in the first round, he is going to probably get that assignment, I would assume, him or Giannis. But they like to use Giannis more as a help defender, so I would assume at least starting the series, Drew Holiday is the guy they throw on to Jason Tatum. And he will be working his ass off on the defensive end of things. So having worked Drew Holiday as your second option against a team who coming into the playoffs, I thought had the best chance to come out of the East, and especially after sweeping the Nets, I feel better about that, even better about that. So I think given what the Celtics have been able to do defensively and really like hone in on just great rotations, great contests, closeouts, they are the best defense we've seen in a long time. And even if Giannis gets his, I think they'll be able to negate a lot of the other guys. And players can only do so much on their own. Like we saw that with Jokic in the Nuggets-Warriors series. Jokic had arguably the best stat line and the best performance of any player in the first round. He only got a game off of the Warriors. So guys can only do so much by themselves. They need other guys to step up. And I think the Celtics might be able to take out a lot of the Bucks supporting cast. Be it, I'm not entirely sure of Chris Middleton's timeline. I don't think he's supposed to be back during the series, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, so without Chris Middleton's shot creation, it makes it a lot harder for the Bucks on offense, I think. And the Celtics have looked so damn good these playoffs. And Ime Udoka had himself a really good series against the Nets. They were able to really hone in on Kevin Durant, really hone in on Kyrie Irving, and play phenomenal defense against them. And I think Giannis is going to be harder to guard than Kevin Durant, which is insane because we're talking about Kevin Durant, but Giannis is going to finish as a top player of all time, and he's probably the best player in the league, if not top two. Like, it's between him and Jokic to me, and he'll make the Celtics work. But also the Celtics side of things on offense, Jason Tatum has really shown out. He's really put the team, like, not on his back because everyone else has been doing really well too, but like he's been able to like really just score with the best of them. And he's also still a terrific defender as well. And he's averaging 7 assists in the playoffs. Like, his playmaking has been really good these playoffs. And Jaylen Brown is a weird one to me because he's kind of frustrating to watch. Like, his off-ball defense is horrendous. And he wasn't shooting well at all in the Nets series. I think he shot like 20% from 3 or something akin to that. Yeah. And it showed on the eye test that he was struggling more than he normally does. But he's still able to get he's still a good on-ball defender, though I wouldn't call him a good defender. And Marcus Smart has really become a good playmaker this season. He won Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he's impacting the game in a bunch of different facets for the Celtics. Al Horford was able to have himself a good series, and I think with Brook Lopez out there, you'll be able to play Al Horford and get away with it and not have the, oh, he's too slow, oh, he can't, I think with that, he'll be able to still be effective. Grant Williams had himself a series against the Nets. He was playing great defense against Kevin Durant. He was hitting his threes. He was doing the damn thing. And I think he'll still be impactful against the Bucks. I don't think he'll be as good on Giannis as he was on KD if he gets that assignment, but I still think he'll be one of the better defenders in the league that you could put against a guy like Giannis. I'm not entirely. They're not going to be able to defend Giannis because it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. But they have a better supporting cast, in my opinion. They have a star in Jason Tatum, and they have one of the best defenses we've seen in years. And with Time Lord getting back, it allows them to do a lot more stuff. I know he wasn't playing a ton, and he didn't look particularly great either, but he is out there. And with getting more reps and getting warmed up again, he will start playing more, I assume. And, you know, I think the Celtics will ultimately come out on top, but I think this is going to be an entertaining series because I think we're going to see an insane Tatum versus an insane Giannis, and the matchups of the stars are what the NBA playoffs is about, and we're seeing two of the top 10 players in the NBA go at it head to head, and I wouldn't be shocked if they end up guarding each other either, because they're just that good that only those two are going to be able to guard each other probably. So, you know, it's going to be a fun series. I'm probably picking Boston, but I think it could go either way just because Giannis is that good of a player that he can swing series by himself.
Yeah, I want to start it going. I got respect for Milwaukee. I respect the Bucks. They were able to do last year and obviously fighting through injuries. Mm-hmm. With some of the predictions that I've seen and some of the ways that people talk about this series, I want to do my best to remind people that last year in their championship run, there was two different Milwaukee teams. There was the Bucks team when it was kind of just Giannis trying to win, and Chris and Drew couldn't hit shots for whatever reason. The shots weren't going. Then there was the Bucks team when the shots were going, when Chris Middleton was able to shot create, when he's able to hit his open shots. Those are two completely different squads. And you even saw that I think it was the closeout game where Chris Middleton, I don't believe he was playing well, and then at the end, like she saved everything to the end, and it immediately changed that game. It changed the squad. With Middleton being able to actually get things to go. Middleton's not even here now, and that's offense. That's a blow on offense, and that's a blow on defense. You get away with it against the Chicago Bulls because Bulls are not a contending team. Defensively, missing Lonzo Ball, one thing, but they didn't even have the personnel really of a contending team in terms of two-way players, in terms of size and depth. They didn't have those things, and so it was enough to go against the Bulls by just saying, Giannis, take the ball, have them W, and all of a sudden now you got shooters everywhere, and then also we're going to close the paint, and then also we're going to harass DeMar DeRozan. So he's going to have to pass the ball, and somebody else is going to have to beat us, and when that ultimately fails, the Bulls fail. So that was a simple enough thing. That's why I thought that was a 5-game series, and I only thought it was a 5-game series because I thought the Bucks were going to fuck off one game, which they did. So that happened. You go against Boston without your... What are we gonna say? He's pretty much in terms of off the ball and being able to shoot. Yeah, Middleton is probably the best shot creator. Spot up shooting that you're taking away. It's a defensive option you're taking away. So I like what you were saying about Jrue Holiday, and he all of a sudden what he does. Which Jrue Holiday you get offensively is all of a sudden a huge deal. It's a big deal in terms of consistency throughout the series. Because yeah, it's one thing to have guys like Grayson Allen or Wes Matthews, or whoever's open for a 3 on a spot up shot that'll probably get created just because Giannis is that good. He's a great passer. It's good to get those, but you will probably also need something else from a Jrue Holiday. And for him, like you said, he's going to be tasked now. He is going to be tasked because Wes Matthews is cool, and my assumption, I don't know who they're going to start off because of what you were saying about what you might need from Jrue Holiday on both ends. I think they might start off with having Jrue Holiday not be on Tatum. It'll probably be a Wes Matthews first. Maybe Jrue Holiday will get switched on to him sometimes. Maybe for certain stretches of the game, he will be on him. I noticed in the Bulls series, they didn't just have him on DeRozan the entire time for that reason, because you want to get what you can from Jrue Holiday. But now you're looking at that going, well, Jaylen Brown's out there too. I did want to mention Jaylen Brown. I got a report today He is playing in game 1, but they're saying it was amid hamstring issues. I don't know where that came from, but all of a sudden he's got hamstring issues. So that is something to watch. Yes, because in the Nets series, he already wasn't being that aggressive until the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, I like fourth quarter Jaylen Brown, but for a lot of the game with much smaller defenders on him, I didn't really see him go at them the way that I wanted. I thought he would settle a little bit, and as you said, yes, he did not have a good 3-point shooting series, which was basically ignored since Tatum, Grant Williams, and Horford were hitting all their shots. So, and even Peyton Pritchard came off the bench, so we just ignored that Jaylen Brown had a bad series. But yeah, Holiday will most certainly at times be tasked with possessions on Tatum. They probably started with Wes Matthews. And as you said, Giannis the help defender. Yes, that's his best role. Rim protection, it's helping. Giannis has still got work to do in terms of like screen navigation. And so if you have Tatum with the ball, you bring a screen and make Giannis use his IQ, basically. Make Giannis use his basketball IQ. That's not his strongest suit yet. It would definitely be if Jason Tatum beats somebody or Jaylen Brown beats somebody. Like if Grayson Allen ends up on one of them and he gets broken down, yes, you want Giannis back there. That's basically what he's adept at. But that is so important without Middleton, just because of how the defensive rotation moves up. Like the things that you will need from Holiday. Hell, the things that you will need from time to time from a Giannis. Yeah, because that one defender is out, you might be asking Giannis to sometimes, step up on a Tatum to be switched out there. Like he will probably get put in those situations at times. So that's a big blow you're missing. And Chris Middleton wasn't even having his best season. This was not a great season for Chris Middleton. But in the playoffs, if all of a sudden he's busted out a 30-point game or he's hit some shots, and game 2 they almost came back against the Bulls specifically because he started hitting shots, like that's a big blow to not have. And unless he pulls a Devin Booker and just randomly joins the series, which even if he does that, I still don't think he'll be fully himself, as Booker wasn't in game 6. You just don't really know how much to count for that. So that's gonna be a very tough thing for the Bucks to overcome just off rip. As far as the defensive activity that you saw from Boston, yes, it gets significantly harder now. The Bucks were able to run lineups with Giannis and all shooting. That is something that the Nets really struggled to do, having Kyrie and KD out there, because out of necessity to match up with Boston, they almost always needed Bruce Brown and a big. And if you didn't do that, you were basically running a 3-guard lineup. So Brooklyn just didn't have the players that they needed to close some of those games out. For the Bucks, it's going to be a lot harder. Yeah, Giannis by default is going to be able to get position better than KD did. He's going to have his feet in the paint more than KD did. So automatically, Boston's rotations are going to be put to the test a little bit more. It is not just going to be Giannis catching the ball in the mid-post and being harassed immediately and, ignoring a player. Like, who's Boston even going to ignore in these lineups? I don't even know if there's not that many lineups the Bucks will run where you can ignore anybody outside of Giannis. There's not that many. And so that's going to be an issue. And I do think Giannis is going to get his. He is Giannis. At the end of the day, this is a guy that takes like 2 steps from the free throw line and his fingertips are already at the rim. So he's going to get his 30-point games. That's going to happen. Even then, like the same way Giannis is used as a help defender, Rob Williams, thank God he's back. He's going to be used as a help defender in that possessions with Al Horford. He'll probably have possessions as a help guy, but I'm pretty sure they will also be having him on Giannis just like in general. I am probably going to be looking at, and I hate to do it, but you'll probably be looking at some Tice minutes there just so other guys can play help defensive roles, because I don't want Al Horford in foul trouble. Like, he was really important to stretching the floor in round 1. Right. And so if we just put him on Giannis outright, that might end up, he might get 2 quick fouls just like that, and all of a sudden his help defense potential is gone, his shooting is gone. So you might have Tice out there and then help defense roaming. But then the roaming thing is even a little bit more difficult now, because who you roaming off of? Like, there's shooters everywhere. And so, but there's a trade-off for shooting with Milwaukee too. Like, if you have Grayson Allen out there, who was a big part of the Chicago series, like he lit them on fire for those 2 games in Chicago. Him on defense, like that becomes something that Boston is probably going to be trying to attack. And Milwaukee's going to be trying to, keep him out of a matchup that involves Tatum. So that's a way that you could put pressure on it. It's gonna be a chess match. Like, even without Chris Middleton, this is going to be a chess match on both sides. Milwaukee's going to be nonstop making Boston, whatever they just did to Brooklyn, Milwaukee is going to be like, all right, do that shit to us now. Like, defend us the same way. Double our guy if you want to. We're gonna we're gonna force y'all to do that as hard as you possibly can and create shots. And Boston gets a little bit harder for them. It's not like Tatum's just going to be shooting over Kyrie or going Dragic now. It's going to have to work a little bit harder for his buckets. When you really count everything, I am also counting for not the wild card of Jaylen Brown's hamstring. And I would go Boston in 7. Like, I respect Milwaukee that much. I really do. Even without Middleton, like Giannis has shown he can turn it up. And so it is a series that I think could go either way. If I knew Jaylen Brown was fully healthy and wasn't going to miss games and that he might not be timid, I would have went 6 without Middleton. But with this, I will go 7. And the chess match is going to be really important. The adjustments are going to be really important. Oh, one last note though. Milwaukee, they have no room for fuckery in this series. Against Chicago, games 1 and 2, they were just like, oh yeah, we're here, we're the champions. They were passing the ball to the crowd. They were passing the ball to Chicago. The turnovers were ridiculous. For a good stretch of the game, they were just like Giannis, just try to run past their defense. They really were super unfocused to start this series in Milwaukee and just tried to out-talent them. I'm sure they probably respect Boston a little bit more than that they're not going to do that, but this Bucks team does have a history of like losing the first 2 games or losing a game that they shouldn't lose or just coming out and Drew Holiday, playing CTE basketball. They have their moments. There's no space for, especially without Middleton, there's no space for Milwaukee to just have a moment in this series. Like, Boston is cut like that this time, and people should know I'm not a homer because I have not believed in Boston one time as a YouTuber. This is the one time in my YouTube life that I'm looking at going, Boston are those guys this year. They hadn't been when they had Isaiah Thomas, they were not those guys. When they were missing Kyrie and Hayward, they were not those guys. This year, they are those guys. So that's where I would go with that.
Yeah, I would probably go Boston in 7 as well. With the Jaylen Brown thing, I think that will affect things more than people realize because hamstrings are a very finicky sort of injury. Like, they are very hard to just keep track of, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Guys like Jokic dealt with a hamstring injury in Game 5 of the Warrior series, and you could tell immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even like a strain or anything. It was just, he kind of tweaked it a little bit. And he was moving a lot like slower than he normally does. And, with Jaylen Brown, he relies a lot more on his athleticism than Jokic does. And we see it with Harden. We see it with guys. Hamstrings are a finicky thing. So with that being the case, I will take Boston in 7. And Milwaukee has a history of kind of lollygagging for the first couple of games in a series, like first 2 games in Chicago. Those were lollygagging games. And then you look at the Phoenix series last year. They lost the first 2 games. They lost the first game against Atlanta. They lost the first 2 against Brooklyn last year.
And once again, that series that you mentioned to Phoenix, like, again, that was Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. It was basically Giannis playing like 1-on-5 because those 2 weren't hitting. And so that's kind of what I was speaking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. And they don't have Chris, like you said. So Giannis is going to get his, he's the best player in the league. He is able to dominate both sides of the floor with relative ease most of the time. But he's going to need guys to step up. And you were talking about shooting, but I think you can roam off a couple of guys that Milwaukee runs. Like Brook Lopez, he's never been like a super elite shooter. Like he's shooting 33% from the playoffs this season. He shot like 30% last year. He isn't a guy who is going to make you pay that much. So I think you could put like a Rob Williams on him and have Rob free safety like he does a lot. And also Coach Bud doesn't make a ton of adjustments. He's not known for that. So I think in the game of chess that is going to be the series, ultimately Boston will come out in 7. I think it's going to be an incredibly competitive series though. And it's not a slight to Milwaukee. Like, Milwaukee is a fun team. I like a lot of their players. There are some I don't, but at the end of the day, they are a champion for a reason. And they have the best player in the league. They have a good supporting cast. I just like Boston's a little bit better.
I would say to the Brook Lopez thing, I will hope that. So in terms of if guys, being able to roam, because that's been such a big part of Boston being able to be elite. Amongst other things, they do a lot of other things in roam, but having a big guy being able to roam is a good thing as well. I will say that I would like Brook Lopez to be the one. Like, if there's anything I would like to get beat by, it would be Brook Lopez threes. Like, if we have to lose, I don't want to lose because Giannis got open dunks. I don't want to lose because Drew Holiday became a great shot creator. Like, if I lose to something and it involves the Bucks, I'm fine with it being, damn, Brook Lopez hit a ton of shots. But also, I'm not sure exactly what he's shooting right now, but my heart will be beating on Brook Lopez open shots is what I would say if that's the guy that they choose, because he, just in the time that I've seen, it's kind of like it's to a lesser degree anyways with the Pelicans, with how much they have going on. If JV is taking 3-pointers, you're like, oh well, damn, he'll make some, but all right, fuck it, like we had to give up something. This might be a series where Boston does have to give up something, so if it does become Brook Lopez threes, then it is what it is. But I could definitely see them getting burned. But then again, is Brook Lopez going to hit enough threes to burn you and end up beating you? That'll definitely have to be on top of something else. So if we are giving up Brook threes, it will absolutely, like, whatever we're doing aside from that, better work. Like, whoever else we're trying to shut down because of that, it absolutely better work. But yeah, it's not like he's gonna average 30 or anything. So it'll be, like, again, it'll be interesting because that's a part of their plan, and they're gonna have to do it for somebody. So it might even be some things where it's like showing and recovering. If it's coming off of a guy like Brook, and say, I don't know, just randomly, it's Al Horford roaming, like, it'll probably be like show and recover, because Brook Lopez is huge, so it's not like he's probably going to be attacking closeouts in terms of putting the ball on the floor. So it'll be that type of thing. But yeah, either way, it'll literally, this is going to be adjustment heavy. It's going to be adjustment heavy. Need Boston shooters to stay on. Grant Williams is another guy. Like, that's one of the things about Boston and why I don't understand why they aren't getting enough respect from a lot of people who are looking at this series, because it's not like, bro, man, they have a lot of initial stuff to throw at Giannis, and he's gonna get his. But in terms of like throwing, and there's always going to be help defense, and there's going to be some doubles, but throwing a Tatum at him, throwing a Brook not Brook Lopez, a Grant Williams body at him, you're definitely going to see, Al Horford or Robert Williams. Like, those are all bodies that you're going to see thrown at him with one of those guys helping. Marcus Smart helping off of a wing and getting back. Like, there's all, like, and Giannis is a great passer, so he's going to have to make him pay, but Boston has a lot to throw at him to squeak by with these wins. That's why I don't understand, some of the disrespect that they've gotten. But it's gonna be fun, man. This is going to be a fun second round for the most part. I think Boston and Milwaukee is the best series here. Hope Joel Embiid only misses one game if it's safe for him. It would at least be fun to watch them go against Bam Adebayo in the Heat, even though I think Miami can pretty clearly exploit some things to win there. Phoenix and Dallas, I hope that Dallas can surprise me. I'm very interested just from a matchup standpoint to see what type of things they create. And then Golden State and Memphis, I am looking forward to seeing if they can up their level. Just because series one, they had to just basically survive and create ways to win without being able to do a lot of the things they like to do in the regular season, and they did it. So I'm going to be interested to see how things change in each series. As I said, if you're just getting here to the end of the pod, the predictions that I put out: Phoenix in 6, Golden State in 6, Miami in 5, and Boston in 7. So we will see, if those come to fruition. And Asher, definitely thanks for coming on once again. If y'all are also in the Twitch chat, we've been doing watch parties. I've been bringing around a couple of guests, but Asher was on the watch party for one of those games that we did. Days are blending together because the playoffs have just been going crazy. Let them, I didn't even do it at the beginning. Let them know where they can, find your stuff and the articles that you write, and where they can find you on Twitter and all that.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at AsherLevyNBA. I write Nuggets related articles for DenverStiffs.com, and I do a lot of draft stuff on my own. I might be making a comeback to YouTube for draft stuff. I haven't completely decided on that one way or the other, but you can find me there. I have a Nuggets podcast, Believe in Nuggets. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, And I have a draft podcast on YouTube with my friend Noah Terranova. You can find that on his channel, which is just Noah Terranova. And yeah, that's where you can find me. Thanks for having me, Dom. As always, yeah.
For sure. This podcast is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Make sure you rate if you're listening on the audio platforms, and if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. Let me know your predictions in the comment section. Do you agree with these? Do you have your own? Your keys to the series, all that good stuff. I will be back when the second round has progressed a little bit. Appreciate you all watching, and I'll see you then.